Welcome back to the channel, reality fans. If you thought the drama on Little People, Big World ended when the camera stopped rolling, you are dead wrong. We have a story today that is so explosive, so heartbreaking, and so financially devastating that it threatens to undo everything Amy Roloff has built since her divorce from Matt. We're talking about a double betrayal. First, reports are flooding in about Chris Marek's past, whispers of a secret life, a second wife figure, and a timeline that doesn't add up. And if matters of the heart weren't enough, we have the receipts on a financial catastrophe that has left Amy reeling, the loss of a $300,000 asset that should have been her safety net. Is Amy Roloff being played? Did she marry a man who isn't who he says he is? And how did she lose a fortune right under her nose? Grab your snacks and buckle up, because we're doing a full forensic deep dive into the nightmare currently unfolding in Oregon. This is the story TLC didn't want you to see. Let's start with the headline that has the entire internet shaking: the second wife. Now, for years, fans have pointed out something off about Chris Marek. He came into Amy's life as a lifelong bachelor in his 50s, a man who had never been married, never had kids, and suddenly wanted to be a stepfather on a reality TV show. It seemed too good to be true. And usually, when things seem too good to be true, they are. New insider allegations surfacing on deep web reality forums suggest that Chris's bachelor status might be a technicality, but not the whole truth. Theories are running wild that Chris had a long-term, common-law partnership, effectively a shadow marriage, that existed right up until, and potentially overlapping with, his courtship of Amy. Sources claim there is a woman from his past, a figure we'll call the ghost wife, who was allegedly promised the same things Amy was: security, a home, and a future. Why is this coming out now? Because the timeline of his real estate dealings is starting to look suspicious. We know Chris is a real estate agent. He knows how to hide assets, and he knows how to keep names off deeds. But eagle-eyed fans have spotted digital footprints linking Chris to an address shared with another woman for years that he claimed to be single and looking. If this woman steps forward, it blows his shy, single guy narrative out of the water. Is Amy the love of his life, or just the one who got him on TV? The term second wife here might not mean a legal bigamy case, but emotionally, it's a betrayal of the highest order. It means Amy isn't his first everything. She's just the next in line. And for a woman who spent 30 years feeling second best to Matt Roloff's farm, finding out she is second best to a secret past would be the ultimate crusher. But the emotional betrayal is only half the story. Let's talk about the money. Amy Roloff has officially lost a staggering amount of equity, and we've calculated the damage to be roughly $300,000 in a single bad real estate maneuver. Here is exactly how it happened. When Amy divorced Matt, she was under immense pressure. Matt Roloff, the ultimate negotiator, convinced her to sell her portion of the farm for approximately $975,000. At the time, she thought she was getting a fair deal, a clean break. She took that money and bought her current home. But here is where the Chris factor comes in. Chris is a real estate agent. It is his job to know the market. Yet, under his watch, Amy sold her share of the farm for pennies on the dollar. Fast forward to when Matt lists the farm. He lists it for $4 million. Do the math. Amy sold half for roughly $1 million. Matt valued the whole thing at $4 million. That means Amy's half was actually worth $2 million. She lost out on $1 million of potential equity right there. But where does the specific $300,000 number come from? It comes from the Glencoe loss. Reports indicate that the home Amy purchased and the renovations she poured into it have not yielded the return she expected. Furthermore, there are rumors that she co-signed or invested roughly $300,000 into a venture or a property adjustment that has gone belly up. Some insiders speculate this $300,000 was tied to a fixer-upper investment Chris recommended. If Chris, her husband and realtor, advised her to make a move that resulted in a six-figure loss, that is not just bad luck. That is negligence. Imagine the scene. Amy, trusting her new husband implicitly, signs a check for $300,000, believing they are building their nest egg. Months later, the market shifts, the investment tanks, or perhaps, and this is the darker theory, the money was funneled into debts from Chris's secret past. That money is gone. For a reality star whose show is ending, losing $300,000 is not a bump in the road, it is a catastrophe. That is college tuition for grandkids. That is retirement money. That is security. And it vanished. This brings us to the most twisting part of the knife, the bromance. Why is Chris so close to Matt? In the history of divorced couples, it is bizarre for the new husband to be best friends with the toxic ex-husband. Unless they are protecting each other. The secret wife theory and the financial loss theory converge here. If Chris has skeletons in his closet, who is the one man who would know about them? Matt Roloff. Matt likely vetted Chris before he let him onto the farm. If Matt knows Chris's secrets, Chris has to play nice. This explains why Chris constantly sides with Matt against Amy. Remember the pumpkin season arguments? Remember when Chris said Matt was reasonable? He is gaslighting Amy to keep Matt happy. It's a boys' club designed to keep Amy controlling the checkbook but losing the power. Matt got the farm. Chris got the fame. And Amy got a $300,000 hole in her bank account and a husband who spends more time giggling with her ex than supporting her emotional needs. It is a triangulation of manipulation. We scanned thousands of comments for this video, and the consensus is heartbreaking. The fans saw this coming. From the moment Chris refused to answer questions about his finances in the early seasons, to the awkward way he proposed, remember the nervous, almost scripted nature of it, the audience has been screaming, "Run, Amy, run." One user wrote, "Chris is a master of the long con. He waited until the ink was dry on the marriage certificate before he showed his true colors. Now Amy is stuck with a mortgage she can't afford and a man who has 1 foot out the door." Another pointed out, "Notice how Chris never wants to film in his own house? We always see him at Amy's. What is he hiding at his place? Or who is he hiding?" These aren't just trolls. These are longtime viewers who have watched human behavior for decades. They recognize the signs of a man who is compartmentalizing his life. And now that the show is potentially over, the glue of the paycheck that held them together is dissolving. Without the cameras, does Chris stick around? Or does he take his share of the remaining assets and return to the secret life he never really left? So, where does this leave Amy Roloff? She is a woman who has survived a public divorce, a dwarfism diagnosis, and the rigors of reality TV fame. She is a survivor. But this is different. If the rumors of a second wife, or secret long-term partner, are true, and if the $300,000 financial loss is confirmed, Amy is facing a crisis that would break most people. She is currently living in a house that represents a financial mistake, married to a man who is the subject of massive infidelity rumors, and her primary source of income. The show is winding down. We need to rally around Amy. She needs to wake up, look at the bank statements, look at Chris's phone records, and take back control of her life before there is nothing left to take. We will be tracking the story every single day. If we get a name on the secret wife, you will see it here first. If we get the deed transfer showing the $300,000 loss, we will publish it. What do you think? Is Chris Merrick a con artist? Or just a misunderstood bachelor? Did Amy make a mistake marrying him? And what would you do if you lost $300,000 because of your spouse? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell because the truth is coming out and you don't want to miss it. Welcome back to part 2 of our investigation into the crumbling fairy tale of Amy Roloff and Chris Merrick. In part 1, we exposed the rumors of a secret wife and the devastating $300,000 loss on the Glencoe house. But rumors are just smoke until you find the fire. And folks, we found the fire. We found the documents. Since our last video, we have uncovered legal filings related to Amy's business ventures that paint a shocking picture of what is really going on behind closed doors. While Amy plays the happy wife on Instagram, her signature on legal documents tells a completely different story, one of protection, distrust, and a woman preparing for war. Plus, we are going to break down the infamous hot mic moment where Chris Marek was caught red-handed betraying Amy's confidence to her arch-nemesis, Matt Roloff. If you thought the secret wife was the only problem, wait until you see how Chris is handling Amy's money and her secrets. Let's get into the evidence. They say follow the money, but in this case, we need to follow the names. Amy Roloff runs a successful empire under the brand Amy Roloff's Little Kitchen. This includes her fudge, her cookbooks, her salsa, and her online merchandise. It is a cash cow. Now, typically, when you marry someone, especially later in life when you are building a retirement together, you merge your assets. You add your husband to the board. You make him an officer in the company so he can help manage the finances. But look at this. We pulled the filings from the Oregon Secretary of State. Amy Roloff updated her business paperwork after the wedding. And guess whose name is conspicuously missing? Chris Marek. In fact, reports confirm that Amy deliberately left Chris off the LLC. She is listed as a member. Her best friend Lisa Dixon is listed as a registered agent. Chris Marek? Nowhere to be found. Why does this matter? Because Chris is a real estate agent. He understands contracts. He understands business entities. For his own wife to professionally sideline him suggests a massive lack of trust. It screams, this is my money. It supports the theory that Amy is terrified of being swindled. Remember, she was married to Matt Roloff for 30 years, a man who controlled every dime and every business decision. She learned the hard way. By keeping Chris off the LLC, Amy is practically shouting that she views him as a liability, not a partner. And here's the kicker. Chris has no other known income stream outside of his real estate commissions, which fluctuate wildly in the show. If Little People, Big World gets canceled, and he isn't on Amy's business payroll, Chris Marek is financially vulnerable. This power imbalance is likely causing massive friction in the household. Is he pushing for access? Is the secret wife rumor actually a cover for him funneling money to a secret account because Amy won't let him touch hers? The LLC snub is the clearest evidence we have that Amy Roloff is sleeping with one eye open. If the LLC is the financial betrayal, this next piece of evidence is the emotional knife in the back. We have to talk about the bromance between Chris and Matt. On the surface, it looks nice. Oh, look, the ex-husband and the new husband are getting along. But let's look closer. In a now infamous scene from season 25, Chris and Matt were caught by producers gossiping about Amy. And I don't mean venting. I mean mocking. Chris Marek, the man who stood at the altar and vowed to cherish Amy, was sitting with the man who emotionally abused her for decades, swapping stories about her annoying habits. Chris complained about Amy leaving drawers open, about her clutter, about her time management, feeding Matt exactly what he wanted to hear. But the true betrayal happened when the producer stepped in. In a rare break of the fourth wall, a producer asked, "Do you guys talk about Amy when she's not here?" Chris tried to lie. He stuttered. He got flushed. He said, No, we don't really." And then, on camera, he was forced to admit that yes, they do compare notes. Think about the psychology of this. Matt Roloff gaslit Amy for years, telling her she was messy, disorganized, and impossible to live with. Amy spent years in therapy, trying to heal from that voice. Now, her new husband is validating her abuser. He is going over to the abuser's house, drinking his beer, and saying, "Yeah, Matt, you were right. She is crazy." This is called triangulation. It is a manipulation tactic. By aligning himself with Matt, Chris retains power over Amy. He keeps her insecure. If Amy complains about Chris, Chris can say, "Well, Matt agrees with me." It isolates Amy in her own marriage. It is a cruel, calculated dynamic that suggests Chris respects Matt Roloff more than he respects his own wife. And for the fans watching, this was the moment the mask slipped. This wasn't the shy, loving Chris. This was one of the boys laughing at the woman paying the bills. We need to circle back to the secret wife allegation because the timeline of Chris's life before Amy is weirdly empty. We call these the ghost years. Chris Marek was a handsome, successful real estate agent in Portland for 20-plus years before meeting Amy. Yet, there is almost zero record of a long-term partner. No ex-fiancé. No divorce records. In a small town like Hillsborough/Portland, people talk. The fact that nobody has come forward to say, "I dated Chris for 5 years," is statistically improbable, unless he was hiding someone. The rumors suggest that Chris was involved in a long-term situationship, a woman who he lived with or stayed with, but never legally married to keep his assets separate. This is where the player badge comment comes in. Do you remember when they first started dating? Chris made a joke about hanging up his player badge for Amy. Most people laughed. But let's take him literally. A man who identifies as a player in his 50s is a man who avoids commitment at all costs. Why did he commit to Amy? Was it love? Or was it the platform? Amy offered him instant fame, a paycheck from TLC, and a storyline. If he had a secret partner on the side, someone he promised he would come back to once the show was over, it would explain why he is so hesitant to merge finances. It would explain why he kept his own townhouse for so long, even after moving in with Amy. He was keeping a getaway car ready. The secret wife might not be a legal spouse, but a woman waiting in the wings for the reality TV check to clear. And with the show ending, fans are terrified that Chris is about to pack his bags and return to his real life. Let's put the final nail in the financial coffin. In part 1, we mentioned the $300,000 loss. But the true tragedy is the opportunity cost. Chris Marek, as a real estate professional, had a fiduciary duty to advise his wife. When Matt offered Amy $975,000 to walk away from the big house and the 32 acres, any competent realtor would have looked at the comps in Helvetia, Oregon, and screamed no. Land prices in that area were skyrocketing. The property was unique. It had a castle, a pirate ship, and global brand recognition. If Chris had advised Amy to hold out, to refuse the buyout, she would still be a half-owner of a property Matt later valued at $4 million. By letting her sell low, Chris allowed Matt to consolidate power. Why? Was he incompetent? Or did he not want to rock the boat with his buddy Matt? Furthermore, let's look at the house they bought together. They paid near market peak. They poured hundreds of thousands into renovations, making the kitchen little person-friendly, redoing the backyard, adding custom features. Real Estate 101 says you rarely get 100% of your renovation money back. By customizing the home so heavily, they have actually decreased its resale value to a standard buyer. If they have to sell that house tomorrow to split assets in a divorce, Amy is underwater. She is trapped in a house that is too expensive with a husband who isn't on the LLC, while her ex-husband sits on a $4 million gold mine. The math doesn't lie. Amy has been outmaneuvered on every single front. So where does this end? The evidence is mounting. We have the business snub. We have the gossip tapes. We have the mysterious past. We have the financial bleeding. My prediction? Season 26, if it happens, will be the divorce season. The cracks are too wide to paper over. Amy is starting to realize that the safe choice she made in Chris might be more dangerous than the volatile marriage she left with Matt. At least with Matt, the devil she knew, she built an empire. With Chris, she seems to be slowly losing it. We are watching the slow-motion collision of a woman who just wants to be loved and a man who seemingly wants to be famous. And in that collision, the bank account is usually the first casualty. We will be back with part 3 as soon as the new court filings drop regarding the farm's rental status, because rumors are Matt is about to sell everything and leave the state, leaving Amy and Chris with nothing but their depreciating house and their secrets. Until then, keep digging, keep watching, and tell me in the comments, do you think Amy should have added Chris to the LLC? Or is she right to keep her money safe from the man with the player badge? I'll see you in the comments. In the vast, sprawling history of reality television, few families have invited us into their most vulnerable medical and emotional trenches, quite like the Roloffs. For nearly 2 decades, we watched Matt and Amy navigate a world not built for them, but for the last 7 years, the torch has been passed. The story isn't just about the farm anymore. It isn't just about the feud, the divorce, or the pumpkin season politics. The real story, the one that keeps millions of people glued to Instagram stories and podcast feeds, is the story of the next generation. It is the story of Jackson, Lila, and Josiah Roloff, 3 children born into a legacy of fame, all 3 diagnosing with achondroplasia, and all 3 navigating a world that is simultaneously rooting for them and critically analyzing their parents' every move. From the terrifying operating rooms where bones are scraped and plates are inserted, to the quiet, heartbreaking moments where a 6-year-old realizes he's too short to keep up with his friends, this is the definitive and censored deep dive into the lives of Zach and Tori Roloff's children. We're going to break down every surgery, every milestone, every controversy, and the massive, family-shattering feud that changed their childhoods forever. This is the untold truth of the new Roloff generation. To understand the current dynamic of the Roloff family, you have to start with the arrival of the prince of the franchise, Jackson Kyle Roloff. Born on May 12, 2017, Jackson didn't just arrive as a baby, he arrived as a statement. For Zach Roloff, who had spent his entire life dealing with the insecurities of being the only dwarf sibling among average-sized brothers and a sister, Jackson was a redemption arc. He was the mini-me that Zach had always subconsciously wanted. But with that genetic mirror image came the terrified anticipation of the medical gauntlet that defines achondroplasia. From the moment Jackson could stand, the clock started ticking on his legs. Achondroplasia affects the growth plates, often causing severe bowing in the legs as the fibula grows faster than the tibia. 4 years, fans watched Jackson run, play, and dominate the soccer field, all while his legs visibly curved outward. It became a point of massive contention and anxiety in the comment sections. Why aren't they fixing him? He looks like he's in pain. The internet doctors were out in full force. But behind the scenes, Zach and Tori were playing a waiting game. A game of chess with orthopedic surgery that culminated in November 2021, a date that would mark one of the most traumatic episodes in the family's history. They opted for a procedure called hemiepiphysiotosis, guided growth plate surgery. Instead of the barbaric, bone-breaking limb lengthening or osteotomies of the past, surgery Zach himself endured with excruciating pain. This was supposed to be the gentle option. Doctors inserted titanium plates into Jackson's growth plates to halt growth on one side of the bone, theoretically allowing the other side to catch up and straighten the leg over time. But gentle is a relative term when you are 4 years old. The aftermath was heartbreaking. We saw images of a brave little boy, hopped up on pain medication, clutching his pal Bunny, trying to understand why his legs wouldn't work the way they used to. Tori described it as one of the hardest days of her life, a sentiment that resonated with special needs parents everywhere. But the sensational part of the story isn't the surgery itself, it's the recovery and the slow realization of the results. Years later, fans are still debating the efficacy of the procedure. In recent footage, Jackson is still active, still playing soccer, but the bowing remains a visible part of his anatomy. It raises the agonizing question every parent faces: did we do enough? Did we do it too late? Or is this just the reality of the condition? But Jackson isn't defined by his legs. He is defined by a personality that is almost eerily confident. He is frequently referred to as the golden child by critical observers of the family dynamics, a label that stems from his easygoing nature, his father's intense focus on his soccer career, and his ability to roll with the punches. He is the stoic older brother, the one who took the move to Washington in stride while the rest of the family crumbled emotionally. However, the cracks in that armor are starting to show, and they are heartbreakingly human. In a recent revelation that shattered the hearts of viewers, Tori shared that Jackson is beginning to understand his difference. On the soccer field, his sanctuary, the place where he bonded with Zach, he stopped in the middle of a game. He looked at his mother and said the words every dwarf parent dreads: "I'm too short." He wasn't being bullied. He was just observing physics. He realized that no matter how hard he ran, his stride was half that of his peers. This wasn't a medical issue. This was an identity crisis beginning at age 6. Zach's response was quintessential tough love Roloff. You have to earn it. Not everyone gets a trophy. But for a mother like Tori, watching her son realize the world wasn't built for him was a pivotal, tear-jerking shift in their narrative. If Jackson is the confident, sporty golden child, Lila Ray Roloff has been unfairly cast as the emotional counterweight. Born in November 2019, Lila's entrance into the world was fraught with a different kind of anxiety. While Jackson's medical journey was orthopedic, Lila's was sensory and developmental, thrusting Zach and Tori into a world of therapies and specialists that they hadn't needed for their firstborn. Almost immediately, viewers noticed a difference in the parenting dynamic. Lila was labeled sensitive, drama, and emotional. She was diagnosed with strabismus, a condition where the eyes don't align properly, necessitating the signature glasses that became her trademark look. But beyond the glasses was a struggle with speech that became a lightning rod for online criticism. For months, armchair experts flooded Tori's comments, demanding to know why Lila wasn't talking as much as Jackson did at her age, accusing the parents of neglecting her developmental needs in favor of the easier child. The truth, as revealed in their podcast, Raising Heights, and emotionally charged episodes of the show, was that Lila was in speech therapy. She was working hard, but the narrative of her being the difficult child persisted. There is a particularly controversial undercurrent in the online discourse regarding Tori's relationship with Lila. Tori, who is self-identified as not a girl's girl and someone who prefers the rough-and-tumble dynamic of boys, has been accused by critics of struggling to connect with Lila's more emotional, sensitive needs. Scenes of Lila crying at the beach, refusing to touch the sand, or having meltdowns during family photo shoots were often met with visible frustration from her parents on camera. Where Jackson would be encouraged to shake it off, Lila's tears were sometimes viewed as an inconvenience. This sparked a massive mommy wars debate. Was Tori being too hard on her? Or were viewers projecting their own insecurities onto a tired mother of 2 disabled children? Lila's journey is one of quiet resilience. She isn't the soccer star, she's the observer. She is the one who hangs back. But recently, she has blossomed. The speech delay has largely resolved, revealing a sassy, hilarious, and deeply affectionate personality that rivals her brother's. She has become a daddy's girl in a profound way, often seen clinging to Zach for comfort in a world that feels too loud and too fast for her. The narrative is shifting from Lila the difficult toddler to Lila the spirited individual, but the scars of those early years and the public scrutiny of her development remain a sore spot for the family. And then there was Josiah. Born April 30th, 2022, Josiah Luke Roloff was the surprise twist in the trilogy. After the emotional roller coaster of Jackson's legs and Lila's sensory struggles, the arrival of a third child with achondroplasia felt like destiny cementing itself. Statistically, there was a chance Josiah could have been average height, but the Roloff genes are strong. Josiah is widely considered the clone of Jackson. The physical resemblance is uncanny, but his temperament is the bridge between his 2 older siblings. He has the tolerance of Jackson, but the clinginess of a pandemic baby. His diagnosis was announced with a here we go again attitude. Zach and Tori were now veterans of the dwarfism world. They knew the drills. They knew the sleep apnea signs. They knew the neck stability issues. But Josiah's role in the family is more symbolic. He represents the battleground era. He is the only child who will effectively have no memory of the big house in Oregon or the daily presence of Matt Roloff. He is a Washington baby through and through. His existence also seemingly sealed the deal on the family size. Tori has been vocal about being done, and Josiah's difficult nights, he is notoriously a terrible sleeper, a fact that Zach laments frequently on their podcast, have solidified that decision. Josiah is also the unwitting pawn in the grandparent Cold War. Being the baby, he is the one the grandparents, specifically Matt and Karen, are most desperate to bond with, yet he is the one most removed from them physically and emotionally due to the geographic and relational distance. Every photo of Matt holding Josiah is scrutinized by fans looking for body language cues. Is Zach hovering? Is Tori tense? Josiah is the symbol of the new normal, a family unit that is self-contained, resilient, and increasingly isolated from the sprawling empire that birthed it. You cannot talk about these three children without talking about the event that nuked their original childhood trajectory, the farm feud. For Jackson's early life, the assumption was written in stone: he would grow up on Roloff farms. He would drive the mules. He would take over the pumpkin patch. He was the heir apparent. That dream died in a small office on the farm, in a negotiation that went so poorly it led to a total estrangement. Matt Roloff's refusal to sell the farm to Zach at a price Zach deemed family-friendly didn't just break a business deal, it broke the lineage. Zach and Tori packed up their lives and moved 45 minutes north to Battleground, Washington. To the casual observer, a 45-minute move seems trivial. But in the world of the Roloffs, it was an exile. The new house, a $1 million property that some fans critically dubbed a sterile farmhouse on a swampy lot next to a junkyard, became their fortress. For the kids, this was a massive shift. Jackson was pulled from the only world he knew. Lila was uprooted during her most sensitive developmental years. The Battleground house is now the main character in their lives. It has the shop for Zach, the playroom for the kids, but it lacks the magical, Disney-like nostalgia of Roloff farms. Critics have savaged the purchase, pointing out the lack of landscaping and the weird layout, but for Zach and Tori, it was a declaration of independence. This move had a tangible impact on the grandparent dynamic. Gone are the days of daily drop-ins. The Cha-Cha, Karen Chandler, relationship, once so close that she was a third parent to Jackson, has evaporated into polite, scheduled visits. The kids are now growing up in a nuclear bubble, with Amy and Chris being the more present grandparents, while Matt and Karen are relegated to the periphery. A sad reality for a man who built an empire largely for the grandkids, who now barely visit. In the last year, the window into the kids' lives has shifted from the polished editing of TLC to the raw, unfiltered audio of the Raising Heights podcast. This is where the real stories come out. This is where we learn about the suede couch disaster, where the kids ruined expensive furniture, or the reality of Zach's severe migraines that leave him incapacitated, forcing Tori to solo parent 3 disabled children for days at a time. The podcast has revealed the grit behind the glamour. We hear about the tantrums that don't make the TV cut. We hear Zach and Tori defend their parenting choices against the mom shamers who criticize everything from Lila's diet to Jackson's screen time. It's a defensive but fascinating look at two parents who feel like they are constantly under siege by the public. They discuss the unique anxiety of raising 3 children who will face physical pain. They talk about the staring in public, how a trip to Disneyland isn't just a vacation, but a gauntlet of pointing fingers and whispered comments that they have to shield their children from. They are raising Jackson, Lila, and Josiah to have thick skin because they know the world won't be gentle. Jackson, Lila, and Josiah Roloff are more than just reality TV side characters. They are the survivors of a family dynasty that fractured under the weight of money and ego. They are medical warriors fighting battles with their own bones before they can even read. They are the subjects of a global experiment in public parenting. As they grow older, the cameras might eventually turn off, but their story is just beginning. They are the first generation of Roloffs to grow up fully aware of their fame, fully aware of their medical destiny, and fully separated from the farm that made their last name famous. Whether they end up resenting the exposure or embracing the platform remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, watching them grow up has been, and continues to be, one of the most compelling human stories of our time.